Good day, everyone. It is my pleasure to present to you my action research. I am Reyciel L. Nuestro, Principal 1 of Kaytambog Elementary School in Indang, Cavite. The title of my action research is Strategic Interventions in Improving the Academic Performance of Grade 6 Pupils in Science of Kaytambog Elementary School. Pupils' performance based on the result of learning outcome assessment in science, especially in grade 6 in Kaytambog Elementary School, continues to be the most difficult field of study in basic education. The results are intended to guide their school in its efforts toward the improvement of quality of education and to provide appropriate interventions for the pupils. Certainly, researchers play an important role in providing out-of-the-box solutions and non-traditional interventions to address the long-standing problem. It is for this reason that the researcher embarked on testing several strategic interventions in teaching science to grade 6 pupils. This study aimed to test several strategic interventions in teaching science that would enhance pupils' learning and remedy the least mastered skills of the pupils, thus attain growth in their academic performance. Specifically, the researchers sought to answer the following questions. What is the performance of the 4 groups of respondents in the pretest? What is the performance of the 4 groups of respondents in the posttest? Is there a significant difference between the performance of pupils subjected to strategic interventions to pupils under the traditional way of teaching? The study area held at Kaytambog Elementary School in Indang, Cavite. The research was implemented in the grade 6 class. The researcher identified the least mastered skills in grade 6 science. There were the topics covered in the test to be administered during pretest and posttest. One of the limitations of this research was the number of pupils involved due to low enrollment, and the study was conducted for only 2 months, which might affect the findings. For the methodology, the study used an experimental setup to determine the effect of the interventions. The 28 pupils of grade 6 were randomly assigned and equally divided into 4 non-overlapping groups. Group 1, computer-assisted instruction. Group 2, additional readings and worksheet presentations. Group 3, increased direct teacher instructional time. And for the Group 4, the control group, no intervention, traditional way of teaching. A pretest which came from the questions that were made and checked last May 2019 science seminar was used and administered to the 4 groups of pupils before the intervention. The experimental groups were exposed to strategic interventions, while the control group was given the traditional way of teaching. A posttest was then administered to the 4 groups after 2 months of implementing the interventions. Both the pretest and posttest were composed of 30 items, 10 items for each of the 3 topics. The scores were tallied and interpreted by the researcher to determine whether there were significant differences between pretest and posttest scores. The 4 groups were compared before and after the intervention. For the results and discussions, Table 1 presents the summary statistics of pretest results. The lowest score, 8 points, and the highest score, 19 points, were both observed in Group 1. This group also had the highest average score, followed by Group 3 and 4, with Group 2 achieving the lowest mean score. Looking at the coefficient of variation, the scores were most dispersed in Group 1 and least dispersed in Group 4. The Cruz-Calwales test revealed that the four groups were not significantly different from each other in terms of pretest scores. This means that prior to applying the interventions, the four groups were basically on the same level. Table 3 shows the descriptive statistics of post-test results. It can be seen that the lowest score increased from 8 points in pretest to 10 points in post-test. The lowest score was observed in Group 3. Meanwhile, the highest score increased from 19 points in pretest to 27 points in post-test and was still observed in Group 1. The scores in Group 1 were the least dispersed, while the scores in Group 4 became more dispersed compared with the distributions of pretest scores. Based on the results, there is sufficient evidence to say that there is a significant difference between pretest and post-test scores across all groups. It is worth knowing that even the traditional way of teaching can lead to a positive effect on academic performance. However, looking at the extent of significance, there is indication that the other interventions can make a more substantial effect. For my conclusions, intervention materials contributed to better learning of the concepts among students. Based on the results of this study, the different interventions, such as computer-assisted instruction, additional readings and worksheet presentations, and increased direct teacher instructional time, can have a positive effect on the pupils' performance in science. Prior to applying these interventions, there were no significant differences among the four groups considered in this study. But after the interventions, significant differences were noted in the mean scores of the students in the four groups. In addition, post-test results indicated that pupils under the experimental groups generally performed better than the pupils under the control group, which was subjected to the traditional way of teaching. And that ends my presentation. Thank you very much.